It's a new month, and so that means that I get to decide which one of these books I'm going to be reading and reviewing in the month of August. It's time to play Fiction Roulette. Hello everyone and welcome back to Paperback Journeys, where, like I say, every month I use this little roulette wheel to spin and decide what I'm going to be reading and reviewing for the month. This wheel is filled with books that I'm interested in reading. I don't know about you, but sometimes I have a little bit of difficulty prioritizing which book I'm going to be reading and when, because honestly, I just want to read everything now. And so this solves that problem for me, where although I read usually more than 4 books in a month, this just nails down, these are 4 that I'm definitely going to be reading for this month. And so let's take a look at the wheel and see what's up for grabs. That's a bit of a game show term, is it? This is a little bit of a game show. Yeah, you're watching a game show. Okay, so let's talk about what's on the wheel for the month of August, and we're going to be starting with 11/22/63 by Stephen King. So this book is about an English teacher in America who finds a secret portal that allows him to travel back in time from 2011 to 1963. What he decides to do with this portal and with this ability to time travel is to go back and stop the assassination of JFK. Which he feels as though this is like the linchpin in American history. If this one thing didn't happen, then everything else would have been different and potentially would have been better. Now, look, I know that, this is weird timing, right? With some recent events that happened that I obviously won't go into because that's not what this channel is about. But I just want to make it really clear, I'm not trying to capitalize on anything that might have been going on in the news recently. I actually have a subscriber. His YouTube name is Exponential Anger, and he's been asking me to read this book for so long. And so I promised him last month, all right, next month I'll put it on the wheel. It's just one of those weird coincidences, strange timing. The reason I'm most excited to read this book is because whenever I see lists of top 10 Stephen King books, this is pretty much always featured and is usually in the top 3. So although I've read quite a lot of Stephen King, maybe 30 Stephen King books, never read this one. And so I want to see if this makes it into my top 5, top 3, maybe my favorite ever Stephen King book. Might happen, mightn't it? The next book that I'd love to read in the month of August is The Fall of Hyperion by Dan Simmons. So this is the second book in the Hyperion Cantos series. So I'm not going to really talk too much about this one. I'm not going to kind of go into what the plot is, because a lot of you might not have read Hyperion. And if you haven't read the first book and you like sci-fi, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm being a little bit judgmental there, but I only just read Hyperion, by the way. I read it about a month ago. So when I read Hyperion, I absolutely loved it. It's just it's a classic sci-fi. The world building is immaculate. The characters were all interesting. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything about the synopsis of the second book because I think it will give away stuff from the first book, but I can just tell you generally what the series is about. So this is set in the distant future where a kind of space government has selected pilgrims to go on a pilgrimage to a distant planet called Hyperion. And on this planet, there is a mysterious and kind of terrifying creature called the Shrike. And a lot of people think that this creature is myth or legend, but it's been cited quite regularly. And so they're going there to, in part, solve the mystery of the Shrike and also the time tombs as well, which are on Hyperion. But these characters in the first book, they don't know each other. And so as a way of kind of getting to know each other and discovering why it is that they were specifically selected to go on this pilgrimage, they all share stories with one another. And so they're trying to piece together the puzzle by sharing these stories of how they came to be chosen. The last book, which really was just a collection of short stories, left off on such a cliffhanger, and so I'm desperate to see what happens next. Hopefully it comes up on the wheel. The next book that I'd love to read in the month of August is Moby Dick by Herman Melville. This is the third time that this book has been on the wheel, and I've heard mixed things about Moby Dick. Obviously, it's probably one of the most famous books that's ever been written. It is factually one of the most famous books that's ever been written. But just in terms of how people have enjoyed it, some people say that it's the best book they've ever read. Others say that in parts it can drag a little bit when it goes into maybe too much detail about the certain aspects of the whaling industry and different types of whales, and it can feel a little bit like a textbook at times. But it is just one of those books that you've got to read it. You know, and some of you are lucky enough that you would have read this in high school, and so you've got that feather in your hat, but I never did. You know, in English high schools, we're just basically reading Shakespeare non-stop. It's Shakespeare, 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 a little bit of Dickens, maybe, and then back to Shakespeare. So yeah, I do want to read this. It's an American classic, and also, look at this. Look at that floppiness. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, it's like a seagull, isn't it? Beautiful. The next book I'd love to read is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. So this is the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy, and it's about a place called Area X, which is a location in the world which has been cut off completely from the rest of society, very mysterious. And so humanity is sending expeditions to this place. The first expedition that went out there just claimed that it was a complete paradise. The second expedition, everything ended tragically and everyone took their own lives. The third expedition, everyone turned on each other and took each other's lives. And so in this book, we join the 12th expedition as they voyage into this kind of mysterious place known as Area X. The characters are 4 female scientists who have to go there, gather samples, kind of survey the area, gather some information, bring it back, and just whatever it is that's contaminating people, avoid that. Do not bring any contaminations back with you. And people just say it's really atmospheric. Some people have said it's unlike anything they've read before. So yeah, I'm excited to give that one a shot. The next book on the wheel is Nuclear War by Annie Jacobsen. So unlike the other books that I've spoken about so far, this one is actually a non-fiction, and it's about the kind of terrifying reality of what would happen directly after a nuclear missile was launched. Annie Jacobsen is an investigative journalist, and for this book, she spent time conducting dozens of exclusive interviews with military and civilians who are experts in their fields, people who built the weapons, people who know the response plans inside and out, people that would actually make the crucial decisions after we discover that a nuclear missile has been launched. This book kind of attempts to paint a picture of what we would all be experiencing, what news would we have access to, how far in advance would we know before a strike was going to happen. Although I can't say that it's something that I'm looking forward to reading like I am the other books, which, you know, are just going to be a pure source of entertainment. This is something which I'm just very curious about, you know? What would it look like? After reading this, am I going to be more nervous, more terrified, or am I going to go, okay, well, at least I know what to expect if it ever happened? It makes no difference, does it, if you know what to expect or not? But yeah, I suppose it's just a point of curiosity for me. This next book has been on the wheel 4 months in a row. So if it doesn't come up this month, I think something mysterious is going on. It's Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. So you might have heard me talk about this book a few times now, so I won't go into too great detail, but this is about a royal bastard by the name of Fitz Apprentice, who is living on the streets but has a magical ability called the Wit, which allows him to communicate with animals, kind of makes him feel a little bit less lonely living on the streets. And then he's hired by the royal family to join a band of assassins that effectively work for the monarchy. Who knows? Fourth time lucky? No, fifth time lucky. You know, I suppose we'll see. Please, I mean, come on, it's got to come up. It's got to come up this month. This is the month. The next book is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This story begins in an underground bunker that has 39 women and one young girl. And the 39 women all remember their lives before they were put into captivity. They're all basically living in a cage in a bunker underground. But the young girl doesn't have any memories of living above ground. She actually doesn't know why she was imprisoned, if she committed a crime, what life is like anywhere else. She has no other knowledge. Sounds to me like she was born in this cage underground. And this character, this young girl, is our narrator. So it sounds a little bit like Emma Donohue's The Room. And I expect there's going to be some similarities there. I don't know if the story takes place mostly in captivity or if they escape and it's more about the young girl kind of adjusting to her life above ground after spending her childhood in captivity. Could be that. Either one of these would be interesting. But this is going to be one which is quite unsettling, I'm sure. I think that seems obvious, right, from the synopsis. But also, it's supposed to be very sad, very heartbreaking. It's not difficult to make me cry, you know? So if this book has any heartbreaking moments, my face is going to get wet. The next book is Us Against You by Frederick Buckman. So you might have noticed that on the wheel, there's quite a lot of dark and heavy books. And so I wanted to add something by Frederick Buckman because he is someone who, although he does touch on heavy and dark topics, he's able to kind of find the light in the darkness and just warm up your heart a little bit. I don't know if you've ever read the book A Man Called Uwe. This is one of my favorite heartwarming books. Actually, they made a movie of it as well, starring Tom Hanks. It's actually pretty good as well. So if you're not going to read the book, at least watch the film. This is the second book in the Beartown trilogy. Again, it's one of those things where because it's a sequel, I can't talk too much about what happens in this one. I can't talk about the synopsis, but I could just tell you about the first book, which I really enjoyed. I read that last year, and it's about a small, isolated Swedish town that relies heavily on the success of their ice hockey team. If the ice hockey team succeeds, then the town succeeds because they're bringing in kind of tourists and spectators that want to see the games, and they're attracting business and people that maybe want to join the ice hockey team. Everything is centered around this ice hockey team and its success. But then something happens, this kind of tragedy, and it splits the team, it splits the community. Some of the people there want to just sweep it under the rug. Some of the other people there say, you know, there's some things that are more important than sports. We need to, you know, we need to address this. I'm not some big ice hockey fan, but I do know about the effect that sports can have on a town and on a community. And so I definitely could relate to that in the first book. But more importantly than that, Frederick Buckman just has this way of writing that I really enjoy. There's so much humanity and emotional intelligence. And I'd highly recommend reading anything by Frederick Buckman. If I was to start with anything, I would start with A Man Called Uwe. It's just a lovely tearjerker of a book. Again, it's easy to make me cry. These two dark patches here are going to be reserved for my kind of continuation into the world of Joe Abercrombie. If you don't know, I've been reading a lot of Joe Abercrombie recently. Started off with The First Law, which is a trilogy, and then I read Best Served Cold, which is a standalone, and then The Heroes. I read that last month. Both set in the same world as The First Law, and so that's, I think, what I really like about Joe Abercrombie's books. They're all set in that same universe. And so the more you read and the longer that you spend in that place, the more real it begins to feel. And I get extra excited when characters from other books sort of come into the current book that you're reading, and that happens all the time. So yeah, I always enjoy it. Really great, dark, kind of grim, dark fantasy where the good guys don't always win. And really, there are no good guys. Everyone's a little bit morally grey, which is also something that I really appreciate in fiction. And yeah, if you like grimdark fantasy, then Joe Abercrombie might be one of my favourite writers, honestly. The more I read him, the more impressed I am. So yeah, these two dark patches here are for Joe Abercrombie's next book, which is Red Country, which is another standalone book. Okay, so those are your contestants. This is the most exciting part of my month, right? I know it's geeky. I know it's a bit silly, you know what I mean, for a grown man to get a little roulette wheel out and start spinning it to find out what he's going to be reading. But I don't know, man. I did it once and I went, that was fun. And I just kept doing it. So anyway, let's find out what I'm going to be reading in the month of August. Here we go. It's been chosen, Assassin's Apprentice. And it was the first one out of the gate as well. You beauty. So the first book that I'm going to be reading in the month of August is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Here's the problem. Because it's been on the list for so long, it's been on the wheel for so long, I've built it up too much in my mind. And now I'm a little bit worried that it's going to be a disappointment. I just need to lower my expectations a little bit and just go into it and go, yeah, just another book, just another book. I haven't been waiting literally half a year to read this thing. All right. By the way, just so you know, before I go any further, we always go by this little dongle bit. All right. We don't go by the arrow. We go by this bit. All right. Moby Dick, it's time. There comes a time in every reader's life when they just have to pick up Moby Dick. My time is now. All right, next up. Nuclear War. This is heavy, isn't it? This is a heavy little bunch. So the third book that I'll be reading in the month of August is Nuclear War, directly after Moby Dick. Yeah, maybe I should have added some more, maybe a little bit of Mitch Albom or something, you know, but all right. Anyway, let's find out what is the fourth book that I'll definitely be reading in the month of August. Here we go. Us Against You. My little bit of light in the darkness. Honestly, this book couldn't come at a better time because I can imagine what kind of mood I'm going to be in after reading Nuclear War. So I think after that, it'll be Frederick Buckman to the rescue to warm the cockles of my little heart. So yeah, those are the 4 books that I'm going to be reading in the month of August. I'm, as always, thrilled to bits to be reading all of these books. By the way, if you'd like to see what I've read so far this year, I started recently to update my Goodreads and I put all of my reviews and everything on there. If you follow me on Goodreads, I'll be sure to follow you right back so that we can build a little community over there as well. If you're interested in seeing what I read last month, then you can click on the video that should be appearing up here. Thanks so much again for watching this video. I really appreciate it and happy reading.